So what if I told you that one of the most radical, most hopeful visions for our future wasn't cooked up in some Silicon Valley lab, but was actually built over 60 years ago? Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're exploring the incredible story of a Nigerian artist and architect who basically created a blueprint for a better world, long before we even had a name for it. But before we get to him, let's start with something you might be a little more familiar with. You've probably heard of cyberpunk, right? That dark, dystopian, high-tech, low-life kind of future. But what about its optimistic cousin, solarpunk? Just picture it. Instead of that grim, rainy, neon-soaked future, you've got a world that is lush, green, and just hopeful. It's a future where technology isn't the villain, it's working with nature in perfect harmony. This is the whole aesthetic at the heart of Solarpunk. It's a vision where humanity didn't just survive, we actually figured out how to thrive. So what's the official definition? What is Solarpunk? Well, it's a sci-fi subgenre that imagines sustainable futures powered by renewable energy. And the key thing to get here is that it's not just an aesthetic. It's optimistic, it's utopian, and it's got a really strong activist streak. It's all about building the world you actually want to live in. Yeah, and this really drives home the point that it is so much more than just pretty pictures of green cities. The core principles are about sustainability, sure, but also community and social justice. There's this idea of radical hope, of embracing a DIY, creative approach to problem solving, and actively restoring our planet. It's a pretty fundamental rethinking of how we live together. Okay, so this all sounds very modern, right? A very 21st century, internet-born kind of movement. But what if I told you that a blueprint for this exact kind of future has already been built? And not recently. We're talking decades ago, in post-independence Nigeria. To find it, we've got to go back to the late 1950s and this incredible moment of cultural revolution known as the Zaria Art Rebellion. And this is where we meet our main character. Meet Demas Nwoko. And here's the thing, before he was a revolutionary architect, he was a painter. This piece from 1962 gives you a feel for his early style. He was part of this amazing generation of young Nigerian artists coming up right as their country was on the verge of independence. You can just imagine the energy, right? This powerful desire to forge a brand new identity. See, here was the problem. When Nwoko started art school back in '57, the curriculum it was almost entirely European. And he and his friends were like, this is absurd. We're in Nigeria. We have our own incredibly rich artistic traditions. So in 1958, they did something about it. They founded the Zaria Art Society, a protest movement that became known as the Zaria Rebellion. Their demand was really simple: let our education reflect our own culture. And out of this rebellion came this powerful new philosophy. They called it natural synthesis. Now, this is the crucial part. It wasn't about throwing out everything modern or Western, not at all. It was all about fusion. The big idea was to take indigenous Nigerian art, traditions, and cultural knowledge and combine them with modern techniques to create something totally new, totally authentic, and uniquely Nigerian. Okay, so you see where this is going, right? Because Nwoko didn't just stop with painting. He took this incredible idea of natural synthesis and he applied it to architecture, creating what he called a new culture in how buildings were designed. And this is where it all began. He literally started by building his own home and studio in Ibadan, mostly out of necessity. This place, the New Culture Studios, it became his personal laboratory. It was his sandbox for testing all these radical ideas about fusing tradition, modernity, and the local environment. And just look at what he was doing. On the left, you see these blocks. They're made from something called Latcrete, a material he basically invented by mixing the local soil, the laterite from the building site, with a little bit of cement. It was local, it was cheap, and it was incredibly strong. Then, on the right, you see reinforced concrete, right? A total symbol of modernity. But he didn't just use it for the structure. No way. He sculpted it, carving these intricate designs drawn straight from his Igbo cultural roots. It's a perfect physical example of natural synthesis in action. But Nwoko's genius didn't stop with materials. He also had this whole different way of thinking about climate. He completely rejected the big trend at the time, which was designing tropical buildings like wind tunnels, just trying to blast air through. He knew there was a much smarter, more subtle approach, one rooted in centuries of indigenous knowledge. So how did he do it? Well, it's this brilliant passive cooling system that is just
So elegant in its simplicity. First, you have low vents that pull in the cooler air from near the ground. Then, those thick Latcrete walls we talked about, they act as thermal mass, basically soaking up the day's heat and keeping the inside cool. Then, as the air inside naturally warms up and rises, it escapes through high vents near the roof. And just like that, you get this constant, gentle air exchange, all without a single watt of power for air conditioning. It's genius.
And the culmination of all these ideas, you can really see it in his first big professional project, the Dominican Chapel in Ibadan. I mean, just look at it. Today, it's considered an absolute architectural masterpiece. It uses local materials, that passive cooling system, and it's just overflowing with cultural symbolism. It's this stunning, sustainable, and deeply spiritual space that somehow feels both ancient and totally modern at the exact same time. Okay, so let's connect the dots here. We have this brilliant architect from the 1960s on one hand, and this futuristic, modern movement called Solarpunk on the other. And when you put them side by side, the parallels are absolutely uncanny. All right, let's just break this down. Nwoko's use of local, natural materials, that's a perfect match for Solarpunk's focus on ecological restoration. His hands-on, self-taught DIY approach, that is the very definition of creative problem solving. His fusion of old traditions and new modernity, that's exactly what Solarpunk means when it talks about a pragmatic use of technology. The climate-responsive design is sustainability in action, full stop. And his whole vision for a culturally authentic architecture, that lines up perfectly with the focus on community and social justice. It's a one-to-one match. So here's the big takeaway. The really crucial point is this. Decades before Solarpunk even had a name, before it was a hashtag on Tumblr or a subreddit, Demas Nwoko was already on the ground, literally building it. He wasn't just theorizing, he was living the philosophy. And now, today, people are finally catching on. His work is inspiring a whole new generation. Take this piece, for example. It's a speculative postcard from a 2015 art exhibit, and it imagines Nwoko in this alternate, more advanced Nigeria, a future built directly on his ideas. And this inspiration is even popping up in places like comic books. This panel, also from that same exhibition, shows a world built on Nwoko's principles, a kind of Nigeria where technology is designed with culture and tradition right at its heart, serving both people and the planet. It just goes to show his legacy isn't just in stone and earth, it's in the powerful stories we can now tell about a better future. And this quote, it's from the comic, but it absolutely channels Nwoko's entire life's work. It just sums everything up perfectly. True advancement isn't about profit or progress just for the sake of it. It's about using our creativity to solve real-world problems without harming each other or our planet. Which really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? The story of Demas Nwoko shows us that sometimes the most radical ideas for the future, they aren't about inventing something brand new out of thin air. Sometimes it's about rediscovering the wisdom we already have. And it really makes you wonder, right? What other blueprints for a better future are just waiting for us, hidden in our own pasts?